We're here today with Ellen Green Bush. Ellen is a lifelong Ohioan with a deep passion for the environment. After years of seeing in action on subjects like Lake Erie, the opioid crisis, net neutrality, tax and gun reform, Ellen decided to use her community organizing skills to found the Port Clinton chapter of American Promise. Today, she works at the state level to advance the 28th Amendment here in Ohio, which would help end unlimited corporate contributions in politics. Ellen, could you tell us a little bit about what got you interested in American Promise?
Yes. When I retired from my profession in 2015, I knew I was going to be involved in something. And that was a year after our Toledo drinking water system was shut down because of the algae. And I grew up on Lake Erie in a small town here in Ohio. And I've had a home on the lake for close to 40 years now. And so the lake is really important to me for a lot of reasons. And so I started to do some looking into why the lake wasn't being cleaned up like it ought to be. And I found out that although we know the source of the pollutants that are flowing into the lake, nobody would take on the concentrated animal feeding organizations that were contributing to the pollution. And that was really because I was told because of their power as a lobbying group. And so it really got me thinking about a lot of other issues. And to me, money in politics is the issue of issues. Not only did it affect what I felt were solutions to the Lake Erie problem, but it contributed to the opioid crisis in Ohio. We can see now with our pandemic how it's contributing to inequitable resources for various people. And so I just sort of jumped in full force and got our group started in Port Clinton, and then that led to getting 3 other groups going in Ohio. So that's my start.
That's fantastic. So American Promise has 6 strategies for building a healthy democracy. American Promise is working towards equal voice and representation for voters, working to empower voters, working to create responsive political institutions, working for connected communities, civic infrastructure that supports our common purpose, and also a commitment to our culture of democracy and each other. Could you please talk a little bit about what some of those mean? So what's an equal voice and representation mean to you and to your organization?
Well, one interesting research study, has found that citizens have exactly 0 influence on the on policy in Washington. That our voices basically don't count because our influence is overpowered by that of businesses, corporations, lobbying groups that have big money that can get influence with politicians. And so we really are not one citizen, one vote anymore and I was really surprised to find that out, there is no correlation between our voice and what gets done in Washington. Mm-hmm. Now, that would be a little, different for you running for the Senate, but we still have those issues of influence in our Ohio legislature from corporations, PACs, and businesses.
Yeah. Well, this is my first time running for office, And I'm running because I'm very interested in making sure that the people in my community have a voice in our state. However, since I've been running, it's been an eye-opening experience. Learning about um, what it takes to run for office, seeing the infrastructure and some of the power behind what is going on in office, it makes it more important than ever that we have a say in how we're funding elections and a say in how we're divided up as voters through gerrymandering and other political machinations. I was super disappointed this year to see that Ohio used to have a $50 tax credit. So every citizen in Ohio could donate to one state politician. That tax credit was eliminated. It was a way for voters to participate in our democracy, to contribute to the system, and to get a tax credit back from the state for up to $50 that you've donated to a state candidate. And that was removed, and it's actually made it harder and harder for regular people to have a voice in politics.
So I think that it's really difficult as a first-time candidate to, because of the money issue, to raise enough money to run a campaign, because first of all, you don't have the name recognition that an incumbent has. And secondly, so much money goes into the PACs and super PACs that are run by political parties that as a newcomer, you're really going to be outspent.
And I understand that all of this was based on Citizens United, which was a Supreme Court ruling. Could you share with us what that ruling actually did?
Well, it was a series of decisions kind of leading up to Citizens United, but basically Citizens United, the ruling ended up meaning that money is speech. And so we have free speech rights, and that includes money and the ability to speak with as much money as we want to. For example, if you're an appointed incumbent who has never really won an election for the seat you're up for, you're at a tremendous advantage because of the money you get from political parties. So, and all of this is a result of the Supreme Court decision in 2010, which basically allowed unlimited money to be donated through super PACs to undisclosed, by undisclosed donors. As we come up towards September and October, we'll start to notice a lot of those dark money ads. They'll be on our social media, our television, we'll get mailers, and we won't know who they come from. And most importantly, they will probably not be true. The other part of that ruling was that corporations are people, which seems crazy really to the average citizen.
It does.
But it allowed corporations to donate money as if they are citizens. And so what happened with that ruling is, because it was a Supreme Court ruling, it really tore down a lot of the traditions in many states that had campaign finance limits. And, you know, basically right now anything goes. The thing that American Promise is trying to do is we're trying to get a constitutional amendment that basically will overturn Citizens United. We've been working with our Ohio legislators to compel them to pass a resolution saying to Congress, we want this constitutional amendment.
Ohio is one of the most gerrymandered states in the United States. We certainly don't have a legislative body that represents the balance of voters in the state right now. And I do believe that removing corporate money from politics would get us closer to that.
Well, I think the thing that a constitutional amendment would do is it would allow the states to then go about their own campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about money in politics without talking about gerrymandering, voter suppression. They're all really intertwined. It's an attempt to diminish the voice of just a regular citizen like you, citizens like you and I.
Yeah.
And so, at least in Ohio, you know, our new maps that are going to be drawn in 2021, it's very encouraging because hopefully then we will have more fair representation. And it's really important in this election coming up to elect candidates who support that gerrymandering effort, because we need those people in our legislature to make sure that process is fair for all of our voters.
So we've seen that it's really difficult as a nation to get amendments passed to our Constitution. In the meantime, while we're working on that, while we're working towards getting corporate money out of our federal and hopefully our state elections, what are some reforms that we can take advantage of right now to expand voting rights, to make representation at the state level more fair? What are some things we could do?
Well, I think in Ohio, one of the big issues in this election coming up is the ability to vote without harming our health. We need to be able to have open absentee ballots. We need to be able to get those ballots. We need to be able to get those ballots back in time. I mean, I myself was not able to vote in the primary because my ballot did not arrive in time through the mail, even though it was requested probably a month before the deadline. And we have to really compel our Secretary of State and our legislature to make the kind of changes we need to be able to allow everybody to vote.
Yeah.
And safely, and to provide the financing for people to vote. I think that's so important in this 2020 election.
Yeah. I will say, on a positive note, our Secretary of State has just made the decision that they're going to send out ballot request forms to every registered voter. So for the people that haven't registered to vote yet, please register. Your voice is important. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
And I'm looking forward to working with you as a legislator.